life, business, reinvention, and the lessons that outlive us. This is the Dave of the Dead podcast.
Welcome to the Dave of the Dead podcast. I am David Chattel, aka Dave, and as you hopefully know by now, this is a show about life, business, reinvention, and lessons that outlive us. Today's conversation isn't just about marketing, startups, or careers. It's about how people actually survive the moments no resume or LinkedIn profile ever explains. My guest today is Maribel Lara, the founder of Beget Love. Maribel has spent more than a decade operating at the highest levels of modern marketing, including years working alongside Gary Vaynerchuk, aka Gary Vee, advising Fortune 500 brands, nonprofits, and fast-growing companies on how to grow with clarity and intention. But that's not why she's here, folks. She's here because before the promotions, before the titles, before the entrepreneurship, Maribel lived through all kinds of things, personally and professionally, which we're going to unpack here today, where survival mattered more than ambition. And she knows what it means to take imperfect roles just to keep going. And she knows what it means to be underestimated. She knows what it means to build a career and a company rooted not only in hype, but rather patience, perspective, and most importantly, love. That is the key word today. So this episode is about starting over, learning from powerful mentors, and becoming one herself, being a Latina in business, and why love, real love, might be the most misunderstood strategy in the business world today. I am honored to welcome Maribel Lara. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm bringing you on the road with me everywhere.
Yeah, speaking of hype, I'm the hype man here. I'm a big fan, as you know. Welcome, Maribel. It's so great to have you.
Thank you.
So, as I said, life, business, reinvention, lessons that outlive us. I want to start by just talking about your life and where this crazy journey began and your upbringing and how it shaped you, not only as a person, but also growing up, a Latina here. So please tell us more about that.
Oh my gosh. So the thing to know about me is I'm a New York City girl, born and raised in the Chelsea projects, the Elliott houses of Chelsea, to two immigrant parents. My mom came to this country from Peru when she was 12. My dad came when he was 19 as a stowaway on a ship from Chile. And that's critical to my upbringing, right? Because I have parents who came here for different reasons, but came here for like a new way of life. And so that puts a pressure on you as a kid, right? You are here and you hear constantly like you are the manifestation of their dreams, right? Dreams that they couldn't even have for themselves, like you embody that. And so there's a certain level of pressure for accomplishment that I carried with me as a kid. And for me, that was about education, right? They saw education as an opportunity that they didn't have. Neither of them was really formally educated. So my sister and I were the first to go to school. That also means that at home, your parents can't help you with your homework, right? You've got to figure it out on your own. Thankfully, I had an older sister, but then you reach a point where it's just like her interests are very different than your interests, and she can't really help you with the things that you're interested in. And so you got to buck up and figure it out. And we're talking as a Gen Xer, figuring it out without the internet, right? You got to go to the library, you got to go read, you got to go look, you got to see what you can figure out. The information was not as easily accessible then as it is now. And that was true for college as well. My sister went to college, but she chose to stay home. And so I was the first in my family to go away to school. And what that meant, right? I went to school in the Boston area, very different than New York City. And the type of multiculturalism and exposure that I was used to in New York City. So for the first time, I felt somewhat as an outsider and needed to find community in a really different way than I needed to when my family was right around me and when my friends came from families that looked like mine. So you're trying to figure out probably the most academically rigorous environment you've ever been in, and you're also trying to figure out new community because you're in an entirely new place, and you also don't have the support of your family. So all of those things at 18, there were a lot of lessons learned in that. And what that did for me, like what figuring out community and how community can get you through things, right? And finding out who you are and what's important to you and having that be a filter for deciphering what am I going to study and what am I going to pursue after this were really phenomenal lessons learned. What I can look back on now, what I knew I didn't wanna do when I was graduating college was I didn't wanna go into a corporate job. For some reason, that just, like, didn't feel like a fit for me at that point in time. I wanted to do something that felt like giving back, and so I actually found my first career, my first foothold in higher education. I wanted to be a face that looked familiar. I wanted to be an understanding person. I wanted to be the kind of person I wish I had on staff at the university I went to when I was a college student. So that was actually my first career. I went back to school for a master's in higher ed administration. And I worked in colleges and universities while I got that degree, and then worked at colleges and universities for nearly a decade after that in student support services, working with student leaders. And that was phenomenal upbringing because I understood counseling skills. I understood leadership development, yes, at a younger stage, right? So for college age students, but it's really similar patterns that you see in organizations and in teams. Eventually, when I ended up in the corporate world, all of this was really phenomenal foundation to be a strong manager, to build really great teams. It was applicable outside of higher education. I did that really happily for like almost a decade. And then I realized I wanted to do something different because moving up the ladder in that world, which go back to ambition, right? Go back to it's your job to fulfill and surpass your parents' dreams. Working in higher education is not enough money to sustain yourself in New York City, where I found myself back with my family. And so I was like, maybe corporate is the only way that I can do this. And despite the fact that it may feel a little bit like selling out, I also know well enough that like we need people with money in our communities to help fund the revolutions, right? And to help fund the kind of change we want to see. So I felt like I could make that switch to corporate sector and still have impact in the community. And that has played out in many, many ways.
Wow. Okay. So we're already up to the business. That's your life.
Sorry,
Now we're up to the
yeah, I run fast.
no, that's really interesting, and you've been really outspoken about your journey. I've known you over these years, but as I really dug into, frankly, things that you've been putting out in the public, you're very open about your journey and what it's been like. And so you had all of those obstacles. You obviously went to a terrific school. I went across the river, by the way, to Boston University. Yeah,
I'll forgive
uh,
you.
forget. We had a great hockey team. Got to give it
Yes.
to BU. BU it's come a long way. But then personally, so you're going through all this and you're figuring your role out in the world. And then personally, and you've posted about this, about, you
Mhm.
had a lot of things going on in your family life. And first, I believe, your dad fell ill and mom fell ill. It wasn't necessarily, the what you were expecting to happen. Obviously, who would? And talk about how you navigated all that and how that impacted your pivot into the business world.
Yeah, when change comes, sometimes it comes all at once. So I had just turned 30. I had made this decision to leave higher education and make this transition into the corporate world. I wanted to focus in marketing. I made the decision to go back to school full time for my MBA. So I had actually I was making this decision about like what came next before I had even gotten there. One of my second to last job in higher education was um, at Cal Poly in California. So I actually lived in California for about 3 years. I'll come home for summers when I had off. And during my last year at Cal Poly, the plan was always to come back to New York after that. And during my last 6 months at Cal Poly, my dad got diagnosed with cancer for the first time. And so it felt like, you know what? I was already coming home. I appreciate the timing of this being that like I'll be home in a few months, right? Like I'll go home for my dad's surgery. And then when he starts chemo, I will be home and I will be able to go pick him up from chemo treatment and take him home. Like I'll move back in with my parents and I'll be there to support them through this. It's also important to know that my mom was disabled. My mom walked with braces and crutches at home. And as she got older, required the assistance of a motorized wheelchair. So like being home to help take care of my dad was a greater responsibility. My sister was already married. Her husband was in the military. She was living outside of New York, and I was able to do that, right? And it was something that I was very happy to be able to do for my parents. So did that, right? Like moved back to New York. Once my contract in California was over, my dad starts chemo treatments. And so my last few years in higher education, I was already a partial caregiver, right? Taking care of my dad as he was going through that. He ended up um, uh, retiring by disability because of the cancer diagnosis and going through all of that. We maybe had a year where he was cancer free. And then the cancer had spread to another organ. We went through another round of chemo. So that just became part of those last few years in higher education was my dad going through treatment. When I had made this decision to go back to school for my MBA, we find out my dad gets diagnosed with terminal cancer and he decides he doesn't want to go through chemo anymore. He's like, I'm not sick. I don't feel sick. Chemo's going to make me sick. We're going to see, right? Like, we're just going to let it play out. I'm going to take care of myself. And so all of a sudden, it's not just I want to change my career. It's also I partly want to change my career because a corporate job is going to put me in a better position to take care of myself, but to also like help support my mom when my dad passes away, because we're now dealing with a terminal diagnosis, right? So now I start going into like planning mode and how do I need to show up for my family? So that was the plan. The plan was you're going to go to business school full time. We're going to support dad through this. I'm going to be in a better position at the end of this. Fast forward my first semester in business school, my mom gets diagnosed with a super rare form of breast cancer. Super rare in that surgery is her only option. It's a super fast growing tumor, but we're also open eyed to the fact that this tumor does not respond to chemotherapy and doesn't respond generally well to radiation either, but we're going to give radiation a try. So my mom has surgery. She has a mastectomy. She goes through radiation treatment. So this is all during my first year of business school. I know my dad's going to die. My mom is never getting breast cancer. I'm going through business school, which, if people didn't know, is not an easy thing to do. And I went first to school for an MBA, despite like being terrified of like finance and economics and accounting and statistics, because I wanted to prove something to myself. But I also wanted a holistic understanding of running a business. I didn't just want to understand marketing. I wanted to go to school for this degree that would prepare me for anything I wanted to do in the business world. And so I took on this massive challenge in addition to like navigating all the stuff that was happening in my personal life. Fast forward to my second year in business school, and I'm in the fall semester of my second year in my MBA program. My dad's still like pushing through. There's definitely like some decline, but miraculously he is still going without any kind of treatments. My mom ends up getting sick, and we find out that the tumor has returned. And in the absence of her breast, because she had a mastectomy, the tumor decided to grow on her lung and was putting pressure on her heart. And boy, sometimes life hits you crazy, crazy fast. We went from a Wednesday diagnosis to a Thursday checking her into the hospital for a biopsy. She passed away on Saturday. So I didn't even have the time
A
to
process.
what was going on. And I'm getting ready to finish my second to last semester in business school. And now it's just like, me taking care of my dad, right? Like my sister can come occasionally, but she's a nurse and she's a full-time mom and her husband is in the military. And so oftentimes she's a single parent if he's got to be away, right? And so like that was not something that I could ask her to like come and be with me and support me. And yes, I have family, but everybody's got jobs and people have kids, right? And they've got stuff to navigate as well. I didn't really have time to process my mom's passing because what was, like, I'm going to do this so I can take care of me and my mom all of a sudden was just like, I just lost my mom. I'm going to lose my dad. So, like, I got to do this to make sure I am in a position to take care of myself when he inevitably passes away. So it definitely like changed perspective on things, but was also like, I don't have time to stop right now and like, woe is me and be sad and think about that. Like that time will be like, I need to put a pin in the processing of this because I can't stop what I'm doing right now. So I don't know how I would have done it without the support of amazing friends in my MBA program and amazing friends in my life, right? Like I had this like group of 3 guys, one of whom is now my husband, who essentially like were like, this was my go-to crew in business school. Wherever classes we took together, like they were my project people and they knew what the situation was with my dad. So like they would come to my apartment all the time. So like they spent time with me and my dad so that I could be as present as possible when I wasn't at school. And they did whatever they need to do to like help me navigate it, right? Like if it was like bringing notes home for me or like covering for me on stuff, like these were the guys that got me through. So I get through my last semester in business school and it's like my dad was waiting, right? Like it's like he was waiting for me to get through the hard stuff. He took a turn for the worse, like shortly after I graduated from my MBA program. So I went from full-time student who, by the way, we haven't mentioned this, graduated into the heart of the like Great Recession. So we're talking 2009, awful time to graduate, awful time to like graduate period, awful time to be a career shifter in an industry that is notoriously not friendly to career shifters. So for anyone who's not in the marketing industry, they like folks right out of college who studied marketing or advertising or like journalism communications. They're not big fans of MBAs. Like MBAs don't get you super far in the advertising world. They want folks who like come in at 21, 22 years old and like work their way up the ladder. Here I was in my early 30s, having worked in entirely what they would see as unrelated industry. So I was not attractive to begin with, and definitely not attractive in a market that was flooded with talent that has had years of experience and was ready to take less money than I was looking to make. So timing was awful. And I had to take time off to become a full-time caregiver for my dad until he passed away. So he ended up passing away that fall, 2009. And I finally did the grieving for him. I did the grieving for my mom. I did like the general, like, what the fuck is going on in life? And I had to buck up because I had only a few months left of savings. My family doesn't come from money, so I didn't have, a sister, or anybody that I could tap into that was gonna like pay my rent for me. So I had to figure it out, right? Like I had a friend who was amazing and moved in with me and paid the rent on my rent control apartment because it was cheaper than what they were paying for rent rooming with 2 other people. And they did that. And I felt like a mooch, right? I felt like horrible. Like I felt like I was doing something wrong. And he was like, no, you're doing me the biggest favor in the world. Hard pill to swallow to ask for that kind of help. I took a job with the US Census because it was a good paying job. It was a census year and I needed money, right? I needed to be able to buy groceries and pay bills. And I started doing like freelance social media consulting, which was the type of marketing that I want to do. But like that was my side hustle until like things leveled out, until the market leveled out, until I had friends in the agency world who could bring me in as a freelancer. It was not a smooth beginning into the industry.
Pause there, just because I'm riveted. I could probably just listen to the whole story. It was It was generous of you to share all that. But I know, you've put your story out there, um, you know, and it's somewhat well known. Truth be told, I had a similar story just to relate to it. I had a
Okay.
gap between my parents both passing away also of cancer. And it was similar with my mom. It wasn't, she was sick, but we didn't really know how sick in her case. Went into the hospital on a Monday, and by Friday, she had passed. And same thing, I had no time to process it. And, then it was, years later, 20 years later to be exact, but when my dad passed also of cancer, but it had been a lot longer, like your dad, years where he was dealing with it and seemingly
Yeah.
doing okay until he wasn't doing okay. So I can really relate to that and understand how you have to, you said, buck up and just deal with
Yeah.
yourself in the minute. You have two options, right? Curl up in a ball and just sit there and do nothing, or forge ahead. So what did you take away from that experience? Just looking back, as we're going to get into your business career in a minute, but what did you take away from that experience, and how are you applying it today?
Well, I would say the first thing was that I could get through anything, right? This one will make me cry. I adored my parents, my best friends, my biggest cheerleaders. And there was life after. And so it really puts things in perspective. I know what sadness is, right? I know what loss is. And so I know what it is like to be down financially, down emotionally, um, and come back from it. So I kind of look at everything now and I'm like, if I could get through that time in my life, and it could make me stronger, because I really do believe that it made me stronger. And it didn't feel that way in the moment, but I can absolutely look back and say, like, that made me stronger. Then I believe that any challenge that I come through, one, I can get through it, and two, it will serve the role of making me stronger and making me a better person. So, absolutely, that perspective. And then the other thing that I came from it was another point of perspective, and that is that life is short and that we have no guarantees. Um, and that I could find comfort in the fact that my parents enjoyed their lives. They took time out to travel, to spend time together. There was always time for family. They showed me what was important. They always made time for those things. And so the reinforcement of those values and knowing that they died with no regrets, right? That I know that they would have looked back on their lives and been like, it was a freaking blast, right? And we spent time with the people that we love. So that perspective, and that has very much been a factor in how I choose jobs, why culture is so important to me, why culture is far more important to me than salary and title are.
Yeah. There's a saying, life is short, but it's the longest thing you'll ever do. So,
I love it.
and so there you were. You had lost both of your parents. It's the Great
Mhm.
Recession. Uh, I want to say it took you years before you ultimately started working in what you really, really wanted to do. The census, while great, served a purpose,
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily the destination. And then everything takes a turn and you join. I don't know if I'm skipping over anything, but this is when you met Gary or joined VaynerMedia. Like, so how did this pivot happen and what was that like? Did you even realize what this was at the time, what it was going to become in any way?
Okay, so I had already been working in the agency world. I had actually been working at Group M and had been there for about 3 years. It was 2014, and a former colleague ended up at VaynerMedia and gave my name. And so the recruiter at VaynerMedia reached out to me. It probably would have been like early spring 2014. And I had an awesome conversation with the recruiter. I had an amazing first interview, an amazing second interview. And I say amazing and not about my performance, but I was so in sync with the people that I met with, and I loved what I was hearing. I knew who Gary was, but in 2014, in the agency world, Gary was, people hated him. Like traditional agency folks did not like Gary. They did not like what he was talking about, right? Because he was basically saying this agency model is broken, right? Like, y'all are not talking about social media. But I was specifically interested in social media marketing. I had been working, yes, at Group M, but at a small agency within Group M that was called M80 that focused on social. So anything social within the Group M world was this company whitelisted as another Group M agency. And so like I was a social girly. So from a social perspective, Gary was definitely preaching what I believed in, but people didn't know what to make of him, and I was included in that. So I often tease that I went to VaynerMedia despite Gary because his reputation was so divisive in those early days. But what I did hear about him that I really liked was his visions for growth, how smart he was, right? He was a smart business guy. He wasn't just like an ad guy, but he was an entrepreneur. And that element was really interesting to me because again, if we go back to this, I didn't go back to school for marketing, right? Like a master's in marketing. I was interested in business holistically. So the idea that this was an entrepreneur, somebody who understood business holistically and understood the role that marketing and social media marketing in particular could serve in building businesses was highly attractive to me. I didn't actually meet with Gary until a few months, probably about 3 months. Within 3 months of being at the company, I had my first one-on-one with Gary. And by that point, like, I guess I was building enough of a reputation for myself, that he had heard a lot about me, and he was like, okay. He was like, so I want to keep you here forever. What do I have to do? Right? Like, what's going to make you happy? And he made me think about that question and come back to him. And this goes back to the question you asked me about what I learned about my parents, or like from that experience with my parents. I knew what the answer was. What I had to decide was whether or not I was willing to tell him the answer, like how candid I wanted to be with him, because it was, in my opinion, a make or break moment as to whether or not he was true to his word. So the thing that I wanted to say to him was, I really like your unlimited vacation policy. And I like my salary here. I like the unlimited vacation policy because it's really important to me that I have time to spend with my loved ones. Right? And so it's just like, how do you say that to the guy that's a freaking workaholic? Like, he works all the time and you're gonna tell him,
Yes, but
and you're
he's all about he's always talking about his mom and dad and how much he learned from them and immigrant parents
right,
and leading with empathy and all that stuff. Was he that person, behind the scenes with you? I'm assuming
right.
yes, and that's why you felt comfortable having this conversation.
Yes. So I did. So I emailed him and I was like, okay, honest truth, this is why. But I explained why, right? I was like, I lost my parents. They were young. They were in their early 60s, right? And I was just like, and I know that like the thing that they wouldn't have regretted was that they spent time with family. And I was like, you're going to get 1,000% from me when I'm here. And I'm going to be here most of the time, but I'm also going to take out time to enjoy the fruits of my labor, right? And to refill and all those things. Yeah, and not only did he respect it, but he also remembered it, because if you fast forward 2.5 years, I then worked directly for him in a role called the Office of the CEO, which was like a shared chief of staff role. There were 4 of us reporting directly into him. And he knew what the question was going to be, right? Which was like, what are the hours in this role that you're making up? And he was just like, I think you're going to end up having more free time than you do in your current role. Because he knew that that was important, right? So it's just like not only this recognition of it, but this like carrying it through and not pretending conveniently to have forgotten. Like, he means it when he says, if you're going to keep your employees around, there is no one system fits everyone. You have to figure out for every employee, what is the thing that makes them tick? What is the thing that is going to keep each individual employee happy and on your team?
Yeah. So you were in that organization for a long time, as you said, in many roles. VaynerMedia, as the office of the CEO, later as a leader within the Sasha Group, I believe named after Gary's dad, if I'm not mistaken,
That's
Sasha.
right.
You launched a country in Mexico. I want to hear a little bit more about the experience, but obviously inquiring minds want to know, like, you were literally at the epicenter of Gary's life and building this, with him. What was that like? What did you learn most from him? What have you taken away from that experience?
Yeah, I had to learn to operate independently. That was the hardest lesson. While I had led teams, there was always somebody above me, right? Like, there was always somebody that I could, like, get their thoughts on what was next. I could run like, I could lay out my plan. That was as a leader, you've always gotta have your plan. You don't look to somebody and be like, "Tell me what to do." That's not being a leader. Um, but literally with Gary, like, there are points in time where you're not gonna get a response. You can't track him down. You sent the text message, but he's not gonna respond to it. So the biggest lesson I learned was just like, you just gotta move, right? You gotta leap. I knew that my job when I was working directly for him was to help him move faster. Like, that was the job description when he first gave it to me was, we're growing really quickly. I find myself on defense. I want back on offense, but I need people to help me scale me in order to move faster. So, like, me not acting on something because I didn't get a response and a text from him was not a reason to just sit there and not act. And so I had to learn the confidence in myself to be like, I'm not gonna fucking burn it, right? Like, it's not gonna break down. Like, I just have to do what I believe is the best thing to do here. And every once in a while, I might get it slightly wrong, and he'll give me feedback on that, and we move on,
So
right?
were
But like,
you were you I always use this term, were you like an intrapreneur where you had
yeah.
obviously the backing of a corporation, but you were kind of acting on your own? And is this how you really were like, I can do this? Is this what built the entrepreneur I'm now talking to?
It's definitely what put me on the path, right? And what I will say was my ruin. Like, you work for him, you are absolutely an entrepreneur. A lot of what ended up in my purview were things that didn't fit naturally into what the agency was already doing, right? He'd be like, "Hey, I met these really cool people." I feel like you were included in that, right? Like, it's just like, "Hey, David's got this idea. It's not for a regular account, but talk to Dave and explore what might be there." So you were one of many, right? Like, that was it. It was just like, figure out if there's something there. If there's something there, what is it? And how do we test out whether or not that might be a new offering or a partnership? Yeah, it's absolutely entrepreneurial because you're being handed things where there is no clear outcome. There's no clear goal. You have to figure out whether or not there's an opportunity there, what the nature of that opportunity is, and what people you might need internally to help figure out that. And that was really great preparation for Sasha Group, which was also entrepreneurial, right? Starting an entirely new agency, but it was a hybrid agency consultancy. And my job was to run the consultancy. We had one offering. And so I had to figure out, well, what else does consulting look like? And specifically, what does consulting look like for small to mid-market businesses? I made it all up. I had to create the offerings. I had to price them out. I had to write the descriptions for them, find the clients for them, run the clients through them, assess them, right? Like, perfect them, put them back out there. All of that was learned within the company. It was all building. And Mexico was then. So one correction is, I didn't launch the Mexico City office. The Mexico City office had actually already been around. I got sent to right the ship in Mexico,
Got
which
it.
was
Okay.
a totally different task. But that was like, go to a country that you're not from, that you never lived in, and yes, you speak the language, but you don't do business in that language regularly. You're gonna go run this team of 40 people that you've never met before, cross-disciplinary, and right the ship.
Unbelievable. Uh, and so when did the light bulb go off? You've been working within the
Yeah.
Vayner organization for years, that you said, you know what? I've learned a lot. I feel like, I'm ready to put out my own shingle, as they say, do my own thing. And what was that moment like? Like, did it happen slowly, or what was the Thelma and Louise jump off the cliff, I'm ready to do
Yeah.
this moment?
So, two things. One is going back to, one of the things in your notes was love and things going back to love. This whole idea of life being short also impacts how I feel about work. You got to love what you do. It's the thing that you spent most of your life doing is working. And so I really have this sense of obligation to myself to love the work that I do, to love the people that I get to work with, because I'm giving of my time, right? And how I spend that time impacts your health. If you hate what you're doing, if you don't want to wake up in the morning and you don't want to do the work that is bringing you money, that is a miserable existence that inevitably has impacts on your health and your livelihood, right? Like all of these things are interconnected. So I feel passionately about loving what I do and who I get to do it with. I was really clear very early on into my time at Sasha, working with small to mid-market businesses, working directly with founders, that is who I wanted to work with. I had the pleasure of having worked with Gary as a founder and then extending that work into our clients at Sasha Group. And I was like, I love working with this client. Like this is the client that I want to work with probably forever. Um, I know Gary well enough. I understand business well enough that when I understood what his ambitions were for VaynerX, right? Like for this holding company overall, I knew that there was going to be a time that Sasha Group was no longer going to work with small and mid-market, and they were going to lean into this agency side. And I also knew that they would lean into being more of a conflict shop for VaynerMedia, meaning they were going to work with Fortune 500 brands, just the ones that VaynerMedia couldn't work with because of competitive contracts, right? So VaynerMedia has had PepsiCo as a client for ages. They can't work with Coca-Cola under the same roof. If they had a different agency, they could work with Coca-Cola. It's what every like large agency in the world does. They have a conflict shop so they could work with the big players, even
Yep.
if they're competitive, right? The Chinese walls, as they're called in our industry. I knew that. I saw the writing on the wall and I was like, at some point that's going to happen. When we get like that might be the trigger to leave. When I see that that's the path Sasha's going down, I know that's not who I want to work with. So I might need to go and start my own consultancy. So I already had that as a like, if this, then this, right? What I didn't anticipate was Mexico. That wasn't in the cards, right? That was a favor to Gary. It was like, literally, can you move to Mexico for 6 to 12 months and like run this office and write the ship? And I was like, sure. I think he saw before I did that might be the trigger, because before I came back from Mexico, we got in a call and he was like, we got to find you some additional responsibility before you come back, because I think that if you come back to the role that you had before you left, you're going to be bored. And I was like, I think you're right. Right? Like I went from like running in my little microcosm and like ruling this world to like craziness of all the things that I was doing in Mexico. But he was right. Like as crazy as it was, I was going to be bored if I came back. I wasn't going to feel challenged. And so we tried really hard to find something within like the VaynerX walls that would meet my challenge, but it was an SMB. And so I actually, November last year, said to Gary, I think time. And he was like, what do you mean? You took a job someplace else? And I was like, no, I'm gonna start my own consultancy. I'm going to continue the work that I had been doing at Sasha, but I'm going to go back to the small clients that we had when we first launched Sasha, because we've moved away from them. I want to go back to that. I want to go back to small. I want to go back to solopreneurs. I want to go back to early stage businesses, doing advisory services, project-based consulting. And I was like, you're not doing it, so I wouldn't be competing with Sasha. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And he gave me his blessing.
So it sounds like it was quite organic, but
Yeah.
you were attached to Gary for so many years. He was a little bit like, whoa, what's going on? But then very quickly was super supportive.
Yes. He did. He
Yeah.
actually didn't accept it right away, if I'm super honest. He was like, he said,
Really?
you got it.
What? Tell
Yeah.
us. What was that
He
like?
said, he was like, "You gotta give me the opportunity to put a few more roles in front of you." And I said, "Okay." And then a week or so later, he texted me back and he said, "Okay, I'm ready."
He knew.
And my
Yeah.
husband was like, "Wait, what happened? There were roles." And I was like, "He heard me." And I was just, when
Yeah.
an employee tells you they're ready to go, you need to let them go.
Yeah. You're more than an employee, you know? You
Thank
were there
you.
for, and that was a special relationship it looks like you
And
had
it
with him.
and still is, and still is.
Yeah. Wow. So many other questions about that, but that was private. All right. So Beget Love. So it feels like
Yeah.
that name organically flowed directly from your heart and it was just obvious, right? That's what you were going to call this.
Yeah.
And any insight into it other than what you've already shared, or was it
So
trademarked?
it already existed.
Okay.
It existed since 2018. So a year before we founded Tasha Group, I had been sitting on this name and actually been sitting on this logo that I had a like graffiti artist, the husband of a friend who did like graffiti work. I'd had him like make that in 2018. So like a good entrepreneur, I was like, well, I already have a name and a logo. Like, what can we move fast with?
I
We can
love
move
it.
fast. We can move fast with that. But the name came from all these things that we're talking about,
Right.
which is like, you got to love what you do, right? Like, life is too short to not be passionate about the things that you do. And that's where Get Love came from. When I first created the name, I thought it was going to be a blog, right? Like you and we remember early
Yes.
blogging day. Like I thought that's what it was going to be. It was going to be a blog where I wrote about like my life and like doing things passionately, whether that was like my hobbies or my job or whatever it may be. But it worked for marketing because the space is so noisy and so crowded. What is the commonality around the things that pop out, the things that are lasting, the people that are lasting? It's an emotional connection, right? It is evoking some semblance of a loving relationship. Yes, brands and people can have loving relationships.
Yeah.
That is they transcend when you have a brand community. That should be the objective, right? And not everybody does that. Not everybody's capable of doing that. It is a filter for who I want to work with, right? Like I want to work with founders who, like me, are passionate about the thing that they're building. They're not just doing it for the potential revenue at the end of it. They're doing it because they feel connected, passionately connected to this thing that they're building, who they're building it for, and the impact that they want to have in the world. And
Yeah.
and that's what Beget Love was about. It was about being as good as you market yourself to be, right? Like truly living the value, like establishing a true value, an aspirational value, and working towards that every day. And then the marketing is easy. Then the branding is easy because it's the truth. We started this conversation with like, I am an open book. And I said to you, right, like it makes this easy. It's easy to talk about it because I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm also not trying to pretend to be anything that I'm not. I feel same way about branding and marketing.
Yeah. Leading with love, leading with authenticity,
Yes.
realness, and zero filters has served you well. And now you are passing that on to others. How has it been? Like, what have been the hurdles starting a new business? It's not easy. You came well known, but you were also starting from almost zero. Like, share more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it came well known, but you gotta get word out that you're doing something different and what that is and who you're hoping to do it with. I gave myself 3 months. I was like, for 3 months, I was like, I know there's gonna be no money coming in, right? So I wanted to be realistic about like, when will clients start coming in and what will that look like? Um, so I had big ambitions, right? My goal was to break 6 figures in the first year. And so I didn't launch until mid-February. I said 3 months. I wasn't going to have revenue, not because I didn't want revenue. I just didn't think that revenue was realistic in the first 3 months of starting this kind of business. But I still set an ambitious goal of 6 figures in my first year. So for context, it's not an agency. I am the sole employee of Beget Love Consulting, and I might contract with different consultants for projects, right? From a casting perspective, but I am the sole employee. And I am very proud to say, as we head into this new year, that I broke six figures in my first year. That I had 20 plus clients, both project based and advisory capacity based, that two of those were nonprofit organizations, that the vast majority of the for profit were women owned enterprises, mostly like early stage. None of these are organizations with funding, right? So most of them are bootstrapped organizations, which is the bulk of small businesses in this country. And I'm heading into the new year with like clients like ready to get going, and it feels really wonderful. It's one thing to have had this thesis of like I can do this and this is how I'm going to do it. It's another to have accomplished what I set out to accomplish, and I feel pretty damn good heading into my second year.
Congratulations. That is no small task. So many small businesses. It's so hard to get off the ground. Six
Yeah.
figures is, yeah, that's unbelievable. And do you have any aspirations, like having come again from a company that started around one person as Vayner did into what it grew into? I'm assuming you want to keep it more boutique, or what is your
Yeah. So
aspiration with Beget?
my aspiration is this model, right? Like
This
it
is it.
is me. It is I will work with freelancers. My aspiration is to be able to like send business to people in my community and my network.
Yeah.
I'm not right for everybody, right? I think casting is really important. I think that there are a lot of folks who do what I do. I just need the ones who are right for me, and the ones who aren't the right fit for me, I want to help them find their right. So it's spreading it around. There is more than enough success for everyone, right? Like I think so many of our societal problems would be solved if more of us operated from this sense of abundance. There's plenty. And so for me, like a huge impact of it is to like spread it around in the community. Like I'm not trying to be a billionaire, right? I'm trying to live a happy life. I'm trying to be able to like pay my mortgage and be able to travel with my husband and have some money put aside for pseudo retirement. I don't ever see myself fully retiring because, again, I love what I do. So why would I stop doing it?
That's what it's all about. Amazing. I have to ask you, because we only touched upon it in the beginning, that you're obviously the daughter of, you said, Peruvian and Chilean parents.
Yeah.
What's it like as a Latina? What's been your cultural experience as a business person and just someone experiencing the world today? Would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I find that it is a reason a lot of my clients come to me. Not surprisingly, I have several clients who are Latina or women of color. It says something to people, right? Like one is if you're an immigrant, if you're the daughter of an immigrant, like that common experience, like there's a value system that we recognize in each other. So it's definitely a wonderful way of connecting with clients really early on and really deeply, really quickly. I would say that my hard work and my ability to like figure it out and this sense of like I'm gonna be all right, right? Like neither my husband and I grew up with a ton of means, and we were just like, okay, entrepreneurship year one, like we might need to be super scrappy, right? Like if it's like spaghetti and pasta, like oatmeal, like I know how to spread a budget. Like rice and beans can get us like fill our bellies and it's protein filled, right? So like there's this scrappiness to having grown up a poor kid, right? Like I stood in the food line. I knew what it was like to not have heat every night and like sleep on the sofa bed all together so we could like stay super warm and put the heaters around us. So like I know what it's like to be scrappy. I know what hard is. Um, and so, yeah, like the perspective that comes with that. And I love my culture. I've worn my culture on my sleeve from the get go. Like I see it as an ad. I see the fact that I speak Spanish as only more beneficial. I wouldn't have had this tremendous opportunity to live and work in Mexico if I didn't speak Spanish. And while I wasn't from that culture, to have that understanding of like Latino culture in general helped me build community there, and I still have strong networks there. So I really see it as such a tremendous asset. And it is an inseparable part of my identity.
Absolutely. Being Latina is truly a superpower, and you
Yes,
embody
it
that
is.
in
Thank
every
you.
way. So we've covered a lot of ground here, your life, your business. You've reinvented yourself multiple times and to great effect. The last part of this show is about lessons that outlive us, right? So
Mm.
when, we close the chapter on this thing called life one day, how would you like to be remembered? Or are there lessons you would pass on to others like you, be it in business, in life? What lessons would you like to share?
Yeah, I want people to remember that I was a good person, right? Like, that I didn't just talk at them, but that I, like, listened. I think the greatest gift you can give people is to just listen to them, right? Like, so many of us just have moments where we just wanna be heard, and we want to be, like, in company and in community with people. So, yeah, so I want to be remembered as somebody who, like, shut up and was just there and just listened, regardless of what they had to say. My constant work on myself is to not judge, um, because we don't know what any given person is carrying at any time. And like, I know that from my own experience, right? Like, there were
Mhm.
moments where I was carrying a lot and nobody would have known that from the outside. And so to have that recognition that that is anybody walking down the street and to not personalize it, um, I want to not forget where I came from, to, like, constantly remind myself, and so to hopefully hold on to the humility that my parents had, that they instilled in me, and regardless of what I hope are more successes, to hold on to that, and to never stray too far from that. And I think the telltale sign that I accomplished that will be if I have as many people show up to my funeral as showed up to my parents' funerals. Like, that will be the, like, I did it.
Beautiful. What song would you want played at your funeral, if any? I have mine picked out already.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm gonna go there because it was my dad's, and it was, oh my god, what am I gonna My Way. Right, like, it's I
It's a
it
good
it is
one.
the song it is the song that played at my dad's. It's also, like, it's such an era, like, it is my dad's era, but it, like, It it is right, right? Like, that I lived my life the way that I wanted to live it, that I didn't live it based on other people's expectations of what they thought it should be. It's a beautiful message, and so I'm gonna steal it from my dad.
Cue music.
Yeah.
Not yet, actually. We'll wait on that. No, great song.
The
Maribel
question will
Lara,
be, do you do the English version or the Spanish
I
version?
was gonna
Because
say,
I'm
I
Mi
was gonna bring up
Manera,
the
what
Gypsy Kings have a great version of it that I love. There's so many versions of it. By the way, written by Paul Anka and performed by Frank Sinatra.
Frank
Yes.
Sinatra.
Not everyone knows that. See what you learn if you stay all the way to the end of this incredible podcast.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Maribel from Beget Love, for being here. It's a pleasure having you. Thank you for sharing your story, imparting your wisdom, and just being an inspiration to everybody. Continued success and felicidades, and great year ahead.
Gracias, Dave. So good to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Life, business, reinvention, and the lessons that outlive us. This is the Dave of the Dead podcast.